Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are drawing Harley Quinn because I decided that I haven't actually drawn Harley Quinn since the third episode of this series of the art show as a whole. So I decided that I'm gonna maybe take a crack at some of the characters which I did really early in the show. I've already kind of done some of those. I've done a couple of Batmans recently. Batman was the first character I did on the show. And then I only did more Batman recently, so I decided to do that, obviously. So I suppose I'm doing Harley Quinn now, but we're not just doing the same old Harley Quinn that we did last time. We did a slight redesign, some sort of like tweak along the lines of the kind of more modern design. But this time, I'm doing just the classic design, the classic kind of court jester design with the big old mallet. That is what I'm going for. So that'll be what we're kind of doing today. So that'll be how we differentiate a little bit from last time. Because obviously the Batman that I did, whenever I did that, was a side profile. That was the first episode of the show. And then obviously semi-recently I did two. Because I did the Halloween episode and then the Christmas episode. Which also happens to be whenever I redid my Superman as well. So this is the thing. There's been a few redos in that sense. So a lot of those earlier episodes were obviously very old, and my art style has changed drastically in that time, so hence why we're doing this. I'm going to be talking a little bit about posing during this as well. So yeah, anyways, without further ado, I'll roll the intro and then I'll start showing you what I have. So yeah. So, this is what I got. It is very, very windy outside, so that might pick up on the mic, even though it's really sunny. It's incredibly, incredibly windy. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully you won't hear that, but you might, so who knows. So yeah, realistically this is pretty simple as poses go, but I've done a lot of tweaking with a lot of stuff, because this is one of my good old Frankenstein method drawings, of where I took about 6 different pieces of reference and then coupled them all together. So I took this arm, and this head, and different body, different legs, all this stuff, and then I merged it all together. And I feel like it all kind of coalesces in a way that's nice. And so I think I've got a fun pose here, the kind of slight, kind of relaxed leg, straight leg. I think this leg maybe needs to be a little thicker, because this one's a little too big as it stands. The comparison isn't quite right here. This leg is too thin, this leg is too thick. And then I think the hands are good. I think the hands look right. I gave her a little kind of like a little wink as well, because I thought that'd be fun. But yeah, this design, mercifully simple. So I feel like this should probably end up actually being kind of a quick one. I've done the ruffles on the wrists as well. I wouldn't have normally done those, because it's not normally a thing that I really care much for, but I figured I'd throw them in. I figured I'd stick as close to the original design as possible. So here, this is obviously, this like headpiece isn't gonna actually tuck at the back. There's a little wrinkle here where it's gonna sit. So I put a lot of little wrinkles in just to kind of show where things are moving. I might tone them down a little bit, because I think there's maybe a little too much in certain places. Like you're gonna get like a bit of a wrinkle around the belly button. You're gonna get that because that's a folding point. That's what's going to happen with a lot of these things. Is obviously you're going to get one below the chest, you're going to get ones a little kind of going up the arms, because the skin will kind of fold a little bit, and especially if you're wearing something skin tight, it'll kind of fold it a little bit. Same way across the top of the chest, you'll get a little fold there. Underneath the chest, you'll get a little fold there. Around the belly button level, you'll get a bit of a fold there, especially if there's, and along the kind of sides of the abs, you'll sort of get that. If there is kind of any sort of like musculature there, you'll get these little kinds of folds going along there. And the reason why you'd get that is because I don't know exactly the reason for it, but it's just a kind of like a sort of like, it's like little folding points of the body where you get this stuff. And obviously around the crotch you get a lot of that as well. But specifically when it comes to the musculature, I said it probably makes sense to include that, because she's supposed to be a gymnast, so it would make sense that there'd be that kind of, specifically this sort of muscle mass of where it's mostly legs, and then kind of thinner arms, kind of broader shoulders, And then kind of stronger core. That's the sort of stuff that you tend to get more so, to my understanding at least, with more gymnastic muscle. So I went for that sort of thing. I kept the sort of like weird elf boot thing, or elf shoes that she's got in the animated series. A lot of the time, these aren't included. They give like different shoes in some way, shape, or form to her, but I chose to include those here because I thought it worked fine for it. And so with the mallet, I've gone for a kind of like cartoon mallet, more so than a sort of like a more on-brand mallet. I've gone for something a little bit more cartoony because I think it looks a little funnier. And it's got the kind of like cartoon bulge along the top and bottom of it, with the kind of like, it almost looks like a barrel with how big the top of it is. But I might maybe bring this down or make the lines a little. Yeah, you know what I'll do? I'll bring this down slightly so that's not tipping over the edge. Bring it up to about there. And then I'm going to put on a guide just so that I can see where she is here. So this is 4x3, so vertical I'm going to need to put this at 2 inches. That's about right. So the way that I'm going to be doing this is that for the background I'm just going to do the two-tone of, I'm going to have a black and a red on either side. That's all I'm going to do, just going to do it like that. It's pretty simple. And clear that guide because I don't need it anymore. She's about in position, more or less. I don't need to move her too much. I would kind of maybe move her over a tiny bit more so that the head is more in position, but I think it's probably fine. So with the background, I'm going to do the two-tone thing of where one side is just flat red, one side is flat black. That's just kind of how I'm going to do that. So for the most part, that's kind of simple. But yeah, in terms of like the posing stuff, again, like I tried to make it sort of like a bit more kind of jaunty and a bit more mobile is, I suppose, the way I'd put it. So there's stuff like, obviously she's relaxing this leg, this leg is straight, this arm is kind of like flailing out like that. She's kind of just doing a bit of a shrug and a wink, but it's also kind of like a showy pose, like a sort of like a sort of thing of where on like a game show, how you'd have the person who kind of like show oh, this thing over here. It's sort of got that sort of vibe to it, I think, as well, the kind of like showiness of it. I don't know, I get that vibe from it. That wasn't necessarily a thing that I was going for, but it was a thing that happened, because you can't necessarily plan for everything whenever you're doing these sorts of things. There are compromises that you have to make, and I suppose as a little thing which I have to do as these things go on is up to a certain point you have to kind of relent on your plan and just kind of sort of go with what's happening, is I suppose the way I put it. So sometimes, especially with these, I have a very particular image in my mind of what I'm trying to go for. Sometimes I can achieve that, sometimes I can't. Sometimes it's a case of where there's a thing which is starting to form, which might be better if I go for it. But if I don't go for it and I stick to the plan, then it's going to start looking weird. It's going to start looking a little bit messy. It's not going to look clear. It's not going to be clean. Things don't always need to be clean. Especially when it comes to art, you don't always need to have them be clean and perfect, because that's whenever the interesting stuff happens, is whenever there's imperfections. That's where the interesting stuff is. If it's all perfect, it's not super interesting looking. There's an art in making things perfect, but it's not necessarily this art. It's a very different thing. That's I suppose the artistry behind something like, I don't know, like I don't know. Like the art in making something kind of perfect work perfectly is a job for crazy people, because that sort of thing is not easy to achieve, and it takes a very, 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 very long time and a lot of effort. So if you're out for that, that is more power to you. But I mean, you know, the human hand creates imperfections, and that's something which I believe is to be cherished. So you will find imperfections. They will happen, and it's better just kind of work with them and work around them rather than trying to mitigate them entirely. There's obviously mistakes that you can avoid, but sometimes there's happy accidents, which you want to go with because they might look nice, especially if you kind of work around them. It creates a nice little bit of flavor and texture to things. But yeah, that's enough of my, I suppose, postulations about the nature of art. But yeah, I suppose I kind of talked everything I need to about the posing and everything, and kind of talked a lot extra as well. Talked over the design a little bit. But yeah, hopefully that wind doesn't pick up too much on the mic because it is very, very windy outside. But yeah, you know what? I think I will start doing these details, and then I will enter the sped up dimension, and then I'll return to do the colors, which shouldn't be too hard because there's only like 3 of them. But yeah, anyways, I will do these colors and then, or I'll do these details and I'll be back. Actually, before I do that, there was a thing which I was considering adding to this, actually, which I thought was interesting, which was I was considering adding a little bit of like hair sticking out or something like that, but I just chose not to because I thought it was bad. And that very much kind of conflicts with the nature of the design. The design is very kind of, it's very focused on its color theory as part of the design, so adding the kind of blonde hair would maybe, I think that kind of contrasts a little too much with the color theory of it. So anyways, I will do these colors, these details, I keep saying it because I'm thinking of colors now. I'll do these details and then I'll be back to do the colors. So yeah. Okay, so that is our details done. That was obviously pretty quick. Wasn't too difficult, all in all. Because, I mean, this is the thing. So I put in the base sketch, I put in the kind of shaded areas. That's for my own reference for later. Because I'm not obviously going to be doing the blacks as part of the costume in just full line detail black. I will do that obviously as color later so that I can shade it more easily. But yeah, so I'll include that as that sort of thing later. But yes, so that was just for my own sanity, just to make my life a little easier. So I had to make a few adjustments to the face there because I believe I'll even do more now, because I do think there's maybe a little too much going on here. I don't think there needs to be this much detailing, all in all. I think I can ease up a tiny bit on it. Maybe recede some of these lines a tiny bit down, just so that it's a little less intense looking. I don't think there needs to be so many lines going on that the face is just overly detailed, because I've said this before, but a thing that can happen when you put too many details on face is that it can start looking old, because that's how you make someone look older, is you put more lines in their face, put more details on there, because generally whenever someone's younger, their face is a little smoother, so it's not going to be as present, so there shouldn't be as many lines catching your eye if you're trying to make someone look a little younger. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to make her look too old, so I wanted to just remove a few of those lines there before I forgot. I adjusted the shape of the hammer a little bit, because since the handle ends like here, you should be seeing this should be more of an angle. Probably even still could stand to be more of an angle, to be honest. So let me just do something like that, expand that out like this, and then I'll just erase that up. Let's do this here now. Just make my life a little easier for later. Let's do this. And then I can just adjust some of these lines as I'm going. This will just speed me up in the future, and again, as you can see, I feel like it fits a little bit better with the particular position of like the handle. This should be again as angled as possible if the handle is over here, because that logically would be in the center. So if the center is over there, then that means this has to be the side. So yeah, I think that is good enough at least. Again, it could probably stand to be further over, but it's probably fine the way it is. I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's not like super important. It's not really the point of this. So I think I don't want to dedicate too much time to it. Because yeah, it's not like super important, so I don't want to dedicate a huge amount of my time to it. But yeah, I think that's good. I'll do the background during this section because I'm going to be doing the colors here now, and then I'm going to be doing the colors here now, and then during this section I'll also do the background just to save myself some time. So I'll have to decide which side is going to be the black, which side is going to be the red. I'm not sure which is going to be black, which is going to be red. I'll have a think about it, because the question is, do I want to emphasize the head more, or do I want to emphasize the rest of the body more? Because if I put the red here, then that means the head is going to blend more into this side. If I put the black here, that means the head will stand out more, but the rest of the body will kind of blend in. I'll have to have a think about it. For a minute. But anyways, I'll start doing these colors, and then I'll be back to do the painted shading. So yeah. Okay, so that is our colors done. I had to do a lot of tinkering with some of them here. There's a lot of these colors which actually don't have to shade with the painted shading, such as the hair, because that's just eyelashes. And it's the same thing with obviously the eyes and then the tongue. I don't have to shade any of those via this, because that's not the same thing. So it's not a thing which I have to worry about quite so much in that respect. So I'm just prepping my brushes here. So yes, I had to do a lot of tinkering with that black because I just felt like it wasn't quite working for me. I'm probably gonna have to change the size of this brush pretty frequently because it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I have to change the size so that it's not quite because it's not going to be quite right for the face, but then on the body I can afford to be a little bit kind of more broad strokey because there's a lot of surface area covered by single colors here. So I altered the shade of red here from the one that's in the background. So this is a slightly sweeter red, so I put it slightly closer to pink. It's slightly more on the pink scale, so I can even show you. That's where it is. It's up here as opposed to the background, which is down here. And then obviously I incorporated the brown for the mallet. Yeah. So you may have noticed that initially I drew the skin tone in as something closer to an actual skin tone, and then I later changed it to be pale, or to be like almost white. And that was just for the sake of visibility. I'm just realizing now there's actually something I have to do, which I forgot to do, meaning I'm going to need to switch back to my brush that I had before, and it was what was it? It was in one of these. Oh, what have I heard to do now? Yes, it was the neck. That's what it was. So I need to get my black again. And then I need to color it up onto the neck because I did it wrong. Initially I forgot to color it in there as that, so now it switches. Now over on this side it's red and that goes down to this. Over on this side it's black, that goes down to this. Right, so I can switch back to my watercolor brushes now because I just realized I forgot to do that. Making a lot of little errors this time. Easily correctable ones, but it's just a lot of stuff where, oh, I forgot to do that, gotta do that again. A lot of little stuff like that. That'll just happen. I mean, again, they're easily correctable, so it's like it's not something that's actually a problem. But yeah. Anyways, I think I will do this painted shading, and then I'll be back to do the detailed shading and the light line, which will obviously be the end. And we're only 2 hours and a bit in, so yeah, this has been very quick, very easy. I enjoy whenever things are easy, but yeah, you know. Sometimes things just work out. I don't know exactly what kind of color tone I'm going to go for on the shading, to be honest with you. I'll probably just stick with a kind of purple and yellow, maybe orange. Yeah, maybe like purple and orange, because we want stuff that's on either side of red. So purple, orange. Yeah, I think that's probably what I'm gonna go for. Something kind of like pinky and purpley for the darks, and then something maybe yellow, orangey for the lights, kind of the usual stuff. And then I'll probably then recorrect it down to being very red in the gradient maps at the end. I'll just kind of color correct that then back to being that, just so for the sake of visibility and everything, I'll do it as the purple and the yellow, and just my own sanity. I'll do it that way during the painted shading and then the detailed shading, and then that'll obviously then get color corrected whenever I do the gradient maps to make it more red. So yes, anyways, I will do this and then I'll be back for the detailed shading. So yeah. Okay, so that's our painted shading done. I've still got the detailed shading and the light line to do. So I decided to give everything this kind of heavy front-facing sheen, and the reason for that is because I wanted to stand out a little bit more from the background, and with the detailed shading, a lot of this stuff is going to be getting masked. Now, I'm thinking I might give... I was thinking of giving a light line more so on the on this side actually, but I'm not sure now that I think about it, because it's against the black, so that should maybe need to stand out a little bit more. I'll think about it. I'm probably going to still end up doing the light line on this side, and I might make it a lighter red color just so that it maybe sort of leans a little bit more into that. I think that might look a little bit more interesting. I'll think about it. I'll consider where I'm going to put that. But yeah, I gave everything the kind of front-facing sheen because it is going to get masked, and it sort of... It emphasizes the shape of things, I think, a little bit nicely. I think I maybe went a little bit overboard on the head. I don't think it needed to be as much on the mask piece. And yeah, like the hood piece, I don't think it needed to be as heavy there. But I think especially on like the legs, I think it kind of emphasizes the shape of things a lot better. It kind of emphasizes the kind of the little tiny wrinkles that they are kind of like... It is very skin tight, so you get that kind of sense of it with the kind of it looks kind of like sleek and smooth, so you get that kind of emphasis from, I think, the sheen on things. But yeah, I think it maybe looked a little better on the black than it does on the red. But we'll see, because again, as I say, a lot of this is going to get masked anyways. I can kind of mask a lot of this stuff with the detailed shading, and worst comes to worst, I can always change what the layer type is, and that'll blend it a little bit more. So I can alter it in a way that I think might work better if I don't like it as much as time goes on. But yeah, so I'll do this detailed shading and the light line, and then that'll basically be us. I'll just do the gradient maps, and then that'll be the wrap up. So yeah, this is pretty short, only just about 3 hours now. So, and we're going into the end of it, so pretty quick. Oh well, pretty nice and quick. I'm happy with that. I will take what I can get in that respect. So I will do the detailed shading and the light line, and then I'll be back to wrap everything up. So yeah. Okay, so that is us done, basically. That's our detailed shading and our light line done. As it stands, I mean, I decided not to do the kind of red light line thing because I felt like the white does stand out a little bit more. It's a little bit more stark, especially given how vivid the red is and how dark the black is. I think it's kind of necessary to have something a little bit more sharp here, rather than something that's obviously that kind of blends a little bit. And in the case of obviously the mallet, it's a little subtler because it's wood grain. Wood grain doesn't kind of shine the same way, especially if it's not varnished, like with a lot of varnish. Like here, this is probably kind of like crappy wood, so you would assume it's not quite gonna shine the same way. And then that's the same with obviously the rest of this. This has that kind of slight bit of sheen, and as I said, it does sort of kind of get a little bit blended. And then whenever we do our gradient maps now, that should kind of just apply it as a kind of little subtle bit of lighting on it for the most part. So what do we want for our darkest part? We want our darkest part to be a kind of a pinky purple about here. Probably want to keep this sort of dark. The red, I'll keep it to this red. Put it about there. And then the middle should be here. Sort of pinky, mostly red. That should work. Keep it about there, sort of dark. I think we only need 3 tones here. I think 3 tones is more than enough. So let's set that to an overlay so we can have a look. Yep, that works. The lighting here is obviously it's kind of got a little bit subtler. It's back now because I put it on soft light. Soft light is a little bit subtler. It's not as sharp, so I tend to prefer that. The overlay I think is a little much, usually. So let's roll with the soft light. Probably going to put this to 60%, which is a little lower than I've been doing recently. I keep doing 70%, but I think 60 works for this. It's a little subtler, a little bit more pleasant. I want a luminosity, which should make everything a little darker. So this will be 20%, because we do need it to make things a little darker, but not massively darker. And we'll get another one of those, make it a color burn, which again makes things darker and a bit more vivid. So we'll make that about 5%, because we only want it to be a tinge more vivid. Because it does also really wash out stuff like the white, as you can see here. Like, let me turn it off. The white gets a lot more washed out. I mean, that's also something that the luminosity does as well, because the luminosity is so dark. But yes, right, okay. So now that is done, let me grab my texture, and throw that over the top of everything, and that will basically conclude us. So with all that, I think I enjoyed doing this one quite a bit. I think this was a fun one, a nice kind of easy one, not too long, not too intense. It's even still bright. I barely needed to put on my lamp. It has been on because it does help with the lighting a little bit. It gives me a bit more front lighting, which is good. And I think we're going to set this texture to be 25%, because it's actually quite hard to see against the background here. It's like sort of visible on the red, but it's quite hard to see on the black. Let me turn it off and on. You can almost barely see it on the black. And even on her, it's like quite subtle. It's actually quite hard to see the texture. Like again, it's kind of visible on the red, but not super visible. So it's quite subtle here. I might even turn it up a tiny bit. That's 30. Look, that's 30. So that obviously makes it a lot more intense on the red. And then it is moderately visible on the black, but not very. I think 30 is actually probably acceptable for that. 30 is probably good, I think. 30 is a little bit more intense than as I said, 30 is a little bit more intense than I might have gone for recently. I typically go for like 20 to 25 is what I go for on the texture, but I think the 30 looks a little better here, especially because it's like practically invisible on the background if I don't do something like that. So we want it to still be visible. We still want it to kind of be very present. Because what's the point in having it if it's not going to be visible at all? But again, obviously it's not supposed to overpower anything. But I think based on our color composition here, it does need to be a little brighter. Because without that, it kind of does just get lost. Yeah, I think all in all, I think that's one that I'm content with. This was a pretty easy one. I had a fairly concise, clear idea that I wanted, and it came across pretty clearly. And again, a lot of the work was done here. The hard part was the posing, which was obviously a lot of the stuff that I did before via the Frankenstein method. Which, yeah, made things a lot easier. And I had a lot of nice little references there for myself, such as the having the shading done in the base sketch, that the shaded parts, just to kind of remind me which parts are supposed to be black, which parts are supposed to be red. Because ordinarily I'd have to pull up a reference for that sort of thing, but I didn't have to do that today. I don't even have a Chrome tab open in the background to make my life easier with some reference images. I didn't even need it. This is good enough. So that, yeah, that was nice and handy. But yeah, this was a fun one. I think I'm probably going to end up going through a few more of the earlier episodes drawings, and maybe not necessarily redoing them, but revisiting the character and maybe coming up with a different interesting idea for them. I mean, I've done a lot of Wolverine. Just via, I had to do him twice for stuff like the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 mural. I did him in that one art stream that I did that one time. I might do one more of those. I might do another one of those at some point. I've been thinking about it recently, but who knows. I might try and find the time to do it. Yeah, but maybe, yeah. If you're interested in that, I suppose you could leave a comment. But yeah, I'd say I'm probably going to revisit more of those older drawings. Maybe redo, not exactly again, as I say, not redo them, but revisit the character, do something new with them. Because yeah, I mean, obviously this is classic Harley Quinn. The original I did was a kind of like I sort of like fiddled with modern design. But yeah, I think this is interesting. Just the kind of just trying something a little different with the classic design. Because a lot of the times I tend to do a little bit of my own spin on things, but here I've tried to be. I've adapted certain things, but I've not like changed it too crazy. Like obviously, I think the like hood, I made the jester like prongs on the side of the head. I made those a lot higher than I think they would ordinarily be. And then the actual bottom of the, like where it comes down into the face, that's supposed to be flat. But here I added a point to it so that it kind of flows with the motion of the domino mask. I think that's what they call those. The little eye mask. I think they call those domino masks. I forget. There is a specific name for them, but I never remember. But yeah, I think that's enough of that rambling. I think all in all, I think that is it. I am pretty happy with it. And yeah. So I'll do my outro and then I'll leave you. So if you liked the video, do whatever it is that you'd normally do, whether that be liking or not. I would of course prefer if you liked it, but I can't make you do that, so I'm not going to try. But yeah, if you liked it, I would of course prefer if you did like it, and I'd appreciate it too. Same deal if you want to subscribe. Of course prefer if you did. Can't make you do it. I would appreciate it greatly. And yeah, so my brain's failing me now all of a sudden. I've had a pretty good flow of consciousness this whole time, but yeah, it's setting in now. The dementia is setting in, but yeah. So yeah, and I don't have to tell you where the subscribe button is. If you know you've seen a YouTube video before, you've presumably been told where to subscribe. So I'm not gonna bog this video down with that. More than it already has been. But yeah, and if you have a particular drawing that you'd like to see me do in the future, you could leave a comment, a nicely worded one, of course, because if you don't do it nicely, I'm not going to do it, and I'm also just probably not going to even look at the comment. Not even going to bother humoring it. So, be nice, be pleasant, and I'll consider it. So yeah, if you choose to watch the next video, I will see you next time. That's always the part of the outro which I struggle to remember. But yeah, with all that said, that is us. I'll say goodbye and I'll leave you. So, bye-bye.